Pick up a jar right now, the one in the back of your fridge that fought you last week. Feel how your hand closes around the lid. That small squeeze, that grip may be telling you more about how long you are going to live than your blood pressure, your cholesterol, or the number on your bathroom scale. I did not believe it either. But doctors have been measuring this exact thing since 1798, and one simple 15-second habit can rebuild what most of us have quietly lost, even on a fixed income, even alone, even in the same little kitchen you are standing in right now. I remember the moment it hit me. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon, and I was standing at my counter holding a jar of pickles like it had personally insulted me. My knuckles went white, nothing moved, and my grandson, all of 11 years old, reached over, twisted once, and handed it back open without even looking up from his game. I laughed it off. But something cold settled in my chest that day, and it took me 2 years and a stack of research to understand exactly what it was. Here is what I want you to understand before we go one step further. The strength in your hands is not a small thing. It is not a party trick. It is one of the single most reliable signals your body sends about the health of your heart, your brain, your bones, and how many good years you have left. And almost nobody our age was ever told this. It slipped out of common knowledge the same way so many useful things did, quietly, while we were all being sold something easier. So stay with me, because by the end of this I am going to hand you a 15-second method that costs you nothing, needs no equipment, and traces all the way back to a French inventor in the 1790s and a dusty medical study most people never read. It works whether you are 90 and using a walker, or 62 and still climbing ladders you probably should not be on. It works in a rented apartment. It works with arthritis. And it works starting tonight. Let me take you back to that jar, because that jar changed my life. After my grandson opened it for me, I could not stop noticing my hands. Buttons took longer. The gas cap on my car felt tighter than it used to. I dropped a coffee mug that I swear I had a good hold on, and I told myself the same lie every one of us tells. I am just getting older. That is normal. Nothing to be done about it. So I let it go, the way you let go of 100 small warnings. Then a friend of mine, a retired nurse named Carol, said something over coffee that stopped me cold. She said that in the hospital where she worked, they had started measuring patients' grip strength as a standard test right alongside blood pressure and temperature. I thought she was pulling my leg. Grip strength? What does squeezing have to do with anything? So I went looking, and what I found genuinely shook me. In 2015, a massive study was published in one of the most respected medical journals in the world, The Lancet. It was called the Pure Study, and it was led by a researcher named Dr. Darrell Leong out of McMaster University in Canada. This was not some small survey. They tracked nearly 140,000 adults across 17 different countries for years, and they used a simple device to measure how hard each person could squeeze with one hand. What they found should be printed on the wall of every waiting room in the country. For every 11 pounds of grip strength a person lost, their risk of dying from any cause over that period rose by 16%. Their risk of dying from heart disease rose by 17%. Grip strength, that simple squeeze, predicted death better than the person's own blood pressure did. Let that sink in. A test you can do with a rolled-up towel was more telling than the cuff on your arm. I read that number 3 times. 16% per 11 pounds. And I thought about that jar and my white knuckles and my grandson twisting it open like it was nothing, and I felt something between fear and fury. Because if this was so important, so well documented, so cheap to measure, why had no one in all my years of doctor visits ever once mentioned it to me? Because the answer is not that the science is new. The answer is that we forgot something our grandparents never had to be taught, and somebody somewhere benefited from us forgetting it. But before I tell you who, I need you to understand just how recently we all had strong hands, and how quickly it vanished. Think about your own grandmother for a moment. Really picture her hands. Mine had hands like garden tools. She wrung out the wash by hand every single Monday, twisting heavy soaked sheets over a basin until the water ran out. She kneaded bread dough by the pound. She snapped beans, cranked the meat grinder, beat the rugs, pumped water, opened every jar in that house without a second thought. She never once did a grip exercise in her life. She did not need to. Her entire day was a grip exercise. Now think about your own hands, and what an average day asks of them. We push buttons. We tap screens. We turn a key, maybe. The washing machine wrings the clothes. The bread comes sliced. The electric opener handles the cans. A little gadget from the drugstore opens our jars. And every single one of those conveniences, every one, took a small demand off your hands. On its own, harmless, wonderful, even. But add up 70 years of them, and you get a generation of people whose hands were never asked to do anything hard and then wondered why they went weak. Here is where I have to be honest with you, and where the story turns. There is nothing wrong with a washing machine. I am not going to tell you to go beat your rugs with a stick, but I want you to understand the trade you made without ever being asked. Every device that promised to save your hands' effort was sold to you as freedom. Nobody mentioned the cost. Nobody told you that a body which is never challenged does not stay the same. It declines. And an entire industry grew up around selling us the easier way, and then, years later, selling us the pills and the gadgets and the mobility aids we needed because we took the easier way. Doctors have a name for what happens to us. It is called dynapenia. It simply means the loss of muscle strength that comes with age. And for a long time, everyone assumed it was inevitable, just the tax you pay for getting old. But that assumption turned out to be wrong, and the proof had been sitting in plain sight since before any of us were born, because here is a fact that stopped me in my tracks. The first machine to measure human grip strength was not invented last year, or in my lifetime, or even in my grandmother's lifetime. It was built in 1798, more than 200 years ago, by a French engineer named Edmé Régnier. He created a device he called a dynamometer, and its whole purpose was to measure the force of a person's grip as a window into their overall vitality and strength. 200 years ago, they already understood that the hand tells the truth about the body. This is not new knowledge. This is old knowledge that we misplaced. And that is the part that started to make me angry, because the more I dug, the more I realized this information was never hidden in a vault. It was just quietly allowed to fade, because a weak, dependent customer who needs to buy help is worth far more than a strong, independent one who needs nothing. So I decided I was done being that customer. And what I found next made me realize my hands were only the beginning. Let me ask you something. Why would the strength in your hand predict your risk of heart disease? Your hand is nowhere near your heart. It makes no sense on the surface. And yet the connection is so strong that researchers now treat grip as one of the best simple markers of whole body health we have. I had to understand why, and the answer changed how I saw my entire body. Your grip strength is what scientists call a biomarker. It is a small, easy-to-measure signal that reflects something much bigger going on inside you. When your grip is strong, it usually means your overall muscle mass is holding up, your nervous system is firing well, your heart can supply your muscles, and your body is still maintaining itself. When your grip fades, it is often the first visible sign that the whole system is starting to decline, long before you feel it anywhere else. Your hands are the canary in the coal mine. And it goes deeper than the heart. In 2020, a researcher named Dr. Mark Peterson at the University of Michigan published work looking at grip strength and biological aging, not the number of birthdays you have had, but how old your cells actually behave. He and his team found that weaker grip strength was linked to what they call accelerated biological aging, changes right down at the level of your DNA. In plain English, people with weaker hands were, in a measurable biological sense, aging faster than people with stronger hands of the very same age. Read that again because it is stunning. Two people, both 72 years old on paper, one with a strong grip, one with a weak grip, and their bodies, at the cellular level, were aging at different speeds. The strength in your hands is not just measuring your muscles. It is, in a very real way, measuring time. There is more. Studies have connected stronger grip to better memory and slower cognitive decline. Researchers have found links between grip strength and bone density, between grip strength and recovery after surgery, between grip strength and the simple ability to get up off the floor if you fall. A strong hand is tied to a strong hip, a strong back, a strong brain. It is all one system, and the hand is the handle you can reach. Now here is the question that kept me up at night. If losing strength ages you faster, and rebuilding it is possible, then what happens if I turn this around? What if the decline is not a one-way street? What if I could take back some of those years? And that is exactly what the research says. Because unlike so many things about aging that we truly cannot change, strength is not one of them. Muscle responds to demand at any age. There are documented studies of people in their 80s and 90s who rebuilt real, measurable strength in a matter of weeks. The body does not stop listening just because you got old. It has been waiting this whole time for you to ask something of it again. But this is exactly the point where most people give up before they start. Because when you say the word exercise to someone our age, their mind fills with gyms and machines and young people in tight clothes and monthly fees and getting down on a floor they are not sure they can get back up from. And I need to stop right here and talk to one person in particular. If you are sitting there thinking this is fine for people with money or a spare room or a body that still cooperates, I am talking to you now. If you rent, if you live alone, if money is tight and every dollar is spoken for before it arrives, if your knees are shot or your balance is not what it was, or you cannot get down on the ground and back up without a real struggle, do not go anywhere. This next part is the part I built for you, because everything I am about to describe can be done sitting in the chair you are in right now, with things you already own, for exactly $0. That question is where the real story begins, and it led me somewhere I did not expect. Everything I found through 2 years of digging the science, the forgotten methods, the practical habits that cost nothing and require no equipment, I put into a book called First Tee, part of a complete system that also includes Deep Seniors and System Complete. These are not books about exercise programs or gym routines. They are about recovering the practical knowledge that was quietly buried while we were all being sold the easier way. If you want to go deeper than this video, the details are in the description below. Now, let me bring you back to the question that was keeping me up at night, because the answer takes us somewhere remarkable. Here is the truth that the fitness industry will never advertise. Grip and strength training for your hands requires no gym, no floor, no equipment, and no getting up and down. You can do the most important version of it seated with a rolled towel, a tennis ball, a dish sponge, or nothing at all but your own closed fist. Let me give you the simplest possible starting point. Take a hand towel and roll it up tight, like a little log. Sit comfortably. Grab it with one hand and squeeze it as hard as you comfortably can. Hold that squeeze while you slowly count to 15. Then let go and rest. Do that a few times with each hand. That is it. That is the whole thing to begin with. No standing, no floor, no strain on your back or your knees, just your hand, doing hard work again for the first time in years. If you do not have a towel handy, ball up a sock. If you have arthritis and a full squeeze hurts, squeeze gently, only to the point of comfort, never into pain. Even a light effort held steady is doing more than you have asked of that hand in a decade. And if your hands are truly weak, start with just 5 seconds and build. There is no shame in starting small. The only failure is not starting. Now weave it into the life you already live. You do not need to set aside special time. Squeeze the grab bar for a slow count when you steady yourself. Squeeze the shopping cart handle at the store. Squeeze the arm of your chair during the commercials. Wring your dish rag out by hand and hold that twist an extra few seconds before you let it go. Carry your groceries in your hands instead of looping them over your wrist, and let the weight ask something of your fingers. Open your own jars, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard, because that struggle is not your enemy. That struggle is the medicine. My friend Carol, the nurse, told me the saddest thing she sees is people who have every device to avoid using their hands, and hands that have gone soft as a result. The gadget that opens your jar for you is not helping you. It is quietly stealing the one bit of resistance your hand had left in the day. I am not saying throw it out. I am saying know what it cost you, and choose on purpose. For weeks, I did nothing but the towel squeeze and the everyday habits. 15 seconds, a few times, a couple of times a day. And I will tell you honestly, the first change I noticed was not in a doctor's office. It was that pickle jar. Same jar, same fridge, and one evening I twisted it open on the first try and stood there in my kitchen genuinely startled at myself. Such a small thing. But it did not feel small. It felt like getting something back that I did not even know had been taken. That is when I went hunting for the real secret, because the plain squeeze works, and it works well. But buried in the research, I found something better. A specific way of using your grip that does something no one would ever guess, and it comes from a place you would never expect. Here is what I stumbled onto, and I want you to hear exactly where it comes from, because it matters. In July of 2023, a team of researchers led by Dr. Jamie O'Driscoll at Canterbury Christ Church University in England published a major review in the British Journal of Sports Medicine. They pulled together the results of 270 studies covering nearly 16,000 people to answer one simple question. Of all the kinds of exercise a person can do to lower their blood pressure, which one actually works best? Now, everything we have been told for decades says the answer should be walking, or jogging, or some kind of cardio that gets you huffing and puffing. That is the conventional wisdom. That is what every pamphlet and every doctor repeats. But that is not what they found. The single most effective form of exercise for lowering blood pressure was not running. It was not cycling. It was isometric exercise, holding a muscle under steady tension without moving. And one of the simplest, most studied forms of it is the isometric hand grip, squeezing and holding. I sat back in my chair when I read that. The very same motion that predicts how long you will live, the very same squeeze our grandparents did all day long, is also one of the most powerful natural tools ever measured for bringing down the pressure that quietly kills millions. And it is free. And you can do it in a chair, and almost no one has been told. So let me give you the exact method, the one that goes beyond the simple 15-second starter, the finale I promised you. This is the protocol that appears again and again in the research on isometric hand grip and blood pressure, and here is how you do it at home. Take your rolled towel or a soft ball or one of those inexpensive rubber grip trainers if you happen to have one. You are not going to squeeze as hard as you can. That is the mistake people make. You want a moderate, steady effort, roughly a third of your maximum, the kind of firm hold you could keep up without shaking. You squeeze at that steady effort and hold it for about 2 minutes. Then you rest for a couple of minutes. Then you switch hands and do it again. You go back and forth, 2 minutes on, a rest between, for a total of about 4 holds, 2 with each hand. And you aim to do this 3 days a week. That is the whole thing. Roughly 12 to 15 minutes, 3 times a week. Sitting in your chair, squeezing a towel. And the blood pressure reductions measured in these studies were not trivial. They were comparable to, and in some cases better than, what people got from far more strenuous exercise, and in some cases approaching what a person might get from a medication, though I want to be clear and honest with you. You never change or stop any medicine without talking to your own doctor first. Bring this to them. Tell them you want to try isometric hand grip training. Any good doctor who knows the research will not laugh. They will nod. And here is where the whole story comes full circle, where the science and the old wisdom shake hands. That steady 2-minute hold, that firm, sustained squeeze, that is exactly what our grandmothers' hands did every wash day, gripping and wringing heavy wet cloth, holding the tension over and over for the better part of an hour. That is what a farmer's hands did, holding the reins, gripping the tool handle, carrying the pails. They were doing isometric hand grip training every single day of their lives and calling it Monday. They never knew the science. They just had the strong hearts and the strong hands to show for it. We got the labor-saving devices and lost both. That is the secret. It was never lost because it was complicated. It was lost because it was too simple to sell. You cannot put a subscription on a rolled-up towel. You cannot patent a fist. There is no monthly fee on wringing out your own dish rag. And so the knowledge of how much power lived in that simple squeeze was allowed to quietly slip away, replaced by things that cost money and asked nothing of you, until a generation woke up with weak hands and high blood pressure and no idea the two were connected, and no idea that the cure had been in their own hands the whole time. 200 years ago, Edmé Renier built a machine to measure the strength in a human hand because he understood it was a window into the whole person. 100 years ago, our grandparents kept that strength without trying, through the plain, hard work of an ordinary day. Decades ago, we traded that work away for convenience and were never told the price. And just a few years ago, in 2023, modern researchers rediscovered with all their studies and statistics what a farm wife in 1890 already knew in her bones, that a strong grip is a strong life. Now, you know it too. And knowing it, you cannot unknow it. Every jar you twist open, every towel you wring, every steady squeeze you hold for a slow count of 15 is a small act of taking yourself back from an easier, weaker life that was sold to you without a receipt. So here is what I want you to do tonight, before you forget, before life gets busy and this becomes one more good idea you meant to try. Go find a hand towel, roll it up tight, sit in your favorite chair, and squeeze it, firm and steady, while you count slowly to 15. Feel your hand wake up. Feel it remember what it was built for. That single squeeze is the first payment on years you did not think you could get back. I want you to understand what really happened here, because it is bigger than your hands. Someone convinced us that getting older meant getting weaker, and that getting weaker meant buying more help. And we believed it because we were tired and the marketing was smooth. But it was never true. The strength was always ours to keep. We just stopped asking our bodies for it. And the moment you start asking again, at any age, in any condition, your body starts answering. That is not a product. That is not a promise on a glossy label. That is just the truth about being human, and it has been true the whole time. You are the kind of person who would rather do a simple thing with your own two hands than pay someone to tell you it is impossible. You trust what works over what is fashionable. You have been let down by enough shiny promises to know that the real answers are usually old, quiet, and free. This is one of them, and now it belongs to you, to use and to pass down to your children and your grandchildren, so they never have to rediscover it the hard way like we did. Now do one thing for me, because I read every comment and I want to hear from you directly. Go grab a towel or a jar right now and give it a good firm squeeze, and then come down to the comments and tell me honestly, on a scale from strong to worrying, how did your grip feel? Did it surprise you? And tell me where in the world you are watching from, because I love seeing how far this little community reaches. Do not just think it, type it. This audience is quiet, and I want to hear your voice. If this opened your eyes even a little, join us here, because this is a growing circle of people our age who are done being talked down to and done paying for things our grandparents got for free. We are digging up the practical wisdom that was quietly buried and putting it back to work, one forgotten method at a time. Subscribe and stay with me, because next time I'm going to show you something just as buried and just as powerful. An old bedtime habit our grandparents swore by that new sleep research is now proving could add quality years to your life, and almost no one under the age of 80 remembers how to do it. You are not going to want to miss that one. I will see you there. Now go squeeze that towel. I hope this opened your eyes, and if you're still here with me, you're exactly who I made this next part for. Inside the Wiser Living Circle, I pick up right where we just stopped. You can ask me your own questions too, and a real person answers. Myself or my team, never a machine. You'd be joining practical seniors just like you. Just point your phone's camera at the code, and you can cancel any time.